Industrial Revolution in 1760, the world has come a long way in terms of innovation. So far, in fact, that many are beginning to ponder the uncertainty of the future. Today, automation threatens to replace 30 to 50% of the workforce. Author Derek Thompson's A World Without Work explores one extreme possibility of a post-work society, which raises questions about the value of work, the maintenance of stability, and what will be done about it. Which led me to the question, should a system of universal basic income be employed in order to maximize human well-being? Despite its recent surge in popularity, the idea of universal basic income, or that everyone receives the same annual salary as a supplement to their current income, enough to cover basic needs. It actually began under the presidency of Richard Nixon. Nixon's program dealt with replacing current federal welfare programs with a guaranteed income for certain demographics. With median earnings of around $7,400 per year, Nixon's Family Assistance Plan, or FAP, offered to give families $1,600 annually. Thus, the FAP mostly benefited the working poor, in contrast to the current welfare programs of the time, which denied benefits to the employed. However, Nixon's proposal received heavy criticism, much of it paralleling the teach a man to fish philosophy. Although his bill failed to gain traction, Nixon's mindset resonates with many who seek to eliminate homeland poverty today, but have not thoroughly considered the idea of UBI due to its questionable plausibility. Fortunately, that is exactly what many researchers and charities are currently exploring. From Richard Nixon to Martin Luther King Jr. to tech savvies in the Silicon Valley, UBI has received bipartisan support since its first proposal. In other words, universal basic income really is universal. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a passionate advocate against poverty, believed that, quote, we must create full employment or we must create incomes. Due to historically demonstrated futility in full employment, incomes makes the most sense. To address the concern of job neglect resulting from financial stability, King explained that, quote, new forms of work that enhance the social good will have to be devised for those for whom traditional jobs are not available, which connects still to concerns over the rise in automation today. Currently, 15 million jobs in the United Kingdom are threatened by automation, and according to Thompson in A World Without Work, technology could exert a slow but continual downward pressure on the availability of work. Nevertheless, a system of UBI could open up new doors for work involving creativity and for creativity in general, through increased leisure time. This idea of leisure, of course, also necessitates the ejection of the sizable amount that would be available. However, this leisure does not have to detract from production, but could instead permit a healthy amount to stimulate mental health. The amount of cognitive enhancement would depend on the type of leisure imposed, though. For example, a group of researchers in Australia found that achievement leisure activities requiring physical or mental stimulation, as well as social leisure with friends, yielded positive mental results. This also includes the pursuit of creative endeavors. Conversely, watching television and related activities that require no mental engagement or mastery correlated to negative results. Based on these findings, one can reason that the benefits of leisure are dependent on the type of leisure performed. Therefore, it would depend on the individual to make the decision whether or not to cultivate his or her mental health. Opponents wonder how citizens will stay motivated to work. What will discourage them from aforementioned negative mental health activities? This logic fails to recognize that people can still get ahead under UBI, which would serve as one type of motivation. Philosopher Adam Smith believed that the gains received in most employments included the constancy or inconstancy of employment in them, the probability or improbability of success in them, and the easiness and cheapness of them. While true that poverty would suppress happiness much more drastically than an excessively high income, those who pursue a passion rather than a high salary are more likely to experience that meaning and happiness in work. According to Nicholas Lohr, author and founder of the Rockport Institute, generally people flourish when they're doing something that they enjoy. Similarly, research psychologists Michelle Reynard and Robin Snuggle in South Africa found that facets such as meaning, flexibility, challenge, variation, and enjoyability in work motivate employees intrinsically. These findings of work, thusly, add leverage against the case of UBI-induced lethargy. As it stands, there have always been people who have taken advantage of the system, and there always will be. Still, many people find meaning in work, and this would also be an incentive to keep them working. Already in progress, renowned charity Give Directly has undertaken the world's largest universal basic income experiment in the world, involving more than 26,000 Kenyans. The charity will compare 4 systems in the span of 12 years, with a control group receiving no cash payments throughout the 12 years, and the other 3 groups receiving different amounts over different time spans, one of them being a monthly sum for 12 years. The charity has completed 2 cash transfers so far, and the results have been wonderful. Kenyan citizens who previously struggled to provide stable housing and food for their families are now able to entrepreneur their own businesses, further their family's education, and cover basic needs. 28-year-old Nancy, as you can see in the picture, a recipient of Give Directly funds, validates this statement in her testament that she is, quote, getting some good income from her fish business, unlike before when she used to work on other people's rice farms for a living. Similarly, launched on January 9th, 2017, 2,000 randomly selected bins that qualify for unemployment benefits now receive monthly incomes of €560 for 2 years, with the goal of determining, quote, whether unconditional cash transfers are more effective than means-tested unemployment benefits with respect to promoting job-seeking in employment. According to Ville-Veikko Polka of Finland's Social Insurance Department, that sum is designed to guarantee subsistence in areas such as food, housing, and electricity. The ideal is to give people a platform to enter the labor market on their own terms, which echoes the results of the Kenya project so far. Former Conservative Senator Hugh Segal will be in charge of the government-approved pilot study in Ontario. This pilot will intentionally differ from Finland and Kenya, in that it will not study employment, but factors like health outcomes, subjects' perception of their place in society, crime rates, and education outcomes. All of these studies will further contribute to the future credibility of this system's effectiveness. However, with such an extensive plan, some limitations do ensue. For example, in an emerging economy like Kenya, such projects are much more easily funded due to the cheaper cost of living. The Kenya project will cost an estimate of $30 million, while the same project would cost closer to $1 billion in the United States. American economist and author David Henderson has determined the startup cost of employing the system in the U.S. to total somewhere around $2.068 trillion, if given to all citizens rather than just the poor. This challenges the notion of project feasibility in larger, more developed nations. How would this be funded? Well, through taxes. Henderson suggests that federal taxes would need to be increased by a whopping 45.7%, which would also cause a huge increase in deadweight loss from federal taxes, making its value disputable. Diversely, economist Ed Dolan suggests that citizens choose between Social Security and UBI. Under Dolan's proposal, all U.S. adults who chose UBI would receive $6,600 annually. Although, while seemingly reasonable, this number pales in comparison to actual standards of living and would not likely put much of a dent into the pockets of the poorest citizens. So, while it is apparent that UBI would enhance human well-being, its implementation remains a challenge. Present research implies that in the current state of the world as a whole, it may be most beneficial to enact in developing countries, as indicated by the success of the Kenya project so far. Granted, Kenya's economic situation would need to be reassessed in a few years for more thorough data, but hopeful signs of economic growth have spurred other economies around the globe to consider similar trials. With all of the research currently being conducted, there should be a sufficient amount available for governments to make informed decisions in the future. Whether for nobility, generosity, or simple humanitarianism, most people desire to end poverty. Yet the current system is failing to do so and has failed to do so for years. In the case that automation overtakes the majority of jobs in the future, leaving many people out of work, universal basic income needs to be recognized as a serious alternative to our present system. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then we'll each ask you a question. How valid and reliable are the sources that you use, and how did you know that they were valid and reliable? And were there some that you didn't use because of that?
Yes, most of my sources were very reliable, and I knew that because I used the search engine EBSCO, which gave me a lot of scholarly articles, which I used. And some of the sources from like newspapers and magazines that weren't as credible mentioned more credible sources, so I kind of used that as a stem-up point to help further my research.
All right, thank you.
Explain the level of certainty you have about your proposed solution or recommendation in developing countries like the United States.
Yes, I am fairly certain on my conclusion because at first I thought that it would be beneficial for all countries, and while that's true, since it's so difficult to fund, since I concluded that it would be most effective in developing countries, I do think that is true if it were funded continually from charities like Give Directly, but there are currently people in the Silicon Valley who are donating money, so it could work that way. Just long term, I'm not totally sure how that would work.
thank
Awesome.
you.